There's a truth most people spend their entire lives running from. The moment you stop needing anyone, you finally begin to live. We grow up believing that happiness comes from connection, from validation, from being seen and loved by others. But the more you chase it, the emptier you become. Because no matter how many people surround you, if you haven't made peace with your own silence, you will always feel alone. The Buddha understood this long before the world was filled with noise. He taught that the greatest journey is not the one that takes you across oceans or mountains. It's the one that takes you within. A journey where you stop begging for attention and start building inner peace. Where solitude stops feeling like punishment and becomes the path to freedom. In this video, we'll uncover timeless Buddhist lessons that will show you why the life you're trying to create won't begin when you find the right people. It will begin the day you find yourself. So sit back, breathe in, and listen closely, because this might be the moment your real life finally begins. 1. True freedom is inner independence. The Buddha said that attachment is the root of suffering, and this truth goes deeper than most people realize. We live in a world where dependence is disguised as love, where validation feels like oxygen, and where we often measure our worth through the eyes of others. From childhood, we are conditioned to believe that we need someone, a friend, a partner, a group, to feel safe, important, or complete. But the moment your happiness becomes tied to another person's presence, your peace is no longer yours. It becomes something fragile, something that can be taken away the instant they walk out of your life. Inner independence doesn't mean isolation. It means emotional maturity. It means you can share love without being enslaved by it. You can enjoy company without losing yourself in it. You can give your heart without fearing that its absence will destroy you. The Buddha taught that real freedom is not found in escape, but in understanding. When you understand that every feeling, every sense of completeness comes from within you, you stop chasing it outside of yourself. Think of how often we say things like, "I can't live without them," or "they make me happy." These phrases sound romantic, but they reveal dependence. What happens when that person disappoints you or leaves? You crumble because your happiness was never truly yours. True freedom begins when you reclaim that power, when you stop giving others control over your emotions. It's about realizing that peace doesn't come from being loved. It comes from loving yourself deeply enough that you no longer seek permission to exist. This kind of independence transforms everything. Your relationships become lighter, not because you care less, but because you no longer cling. You start loving people for who they are, not for what they give you. You begin to enjoy life without constantly needing it to look a certain way. Your mind becomes calm because it's not constantly negotiating for validation. The Buddha compared attachment to holding a burning coal. The tighter you hold, the more it hurts. We hold on to people, memories, and expectations thinking they will keep us warm, but instead they burn us from within. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop suffering. It's understanding that everyone and everything in life is temporary, and that doesn't have to be sad. It can be liberating, because when you stop trying to control who stays and who leaves, you make room for peace to stay instead. When you start enjoying your own company, you realize that solitude is not emptiness, it's self-connection. You begin to feel whole without external noise. You can sit in silence and still feel full. That's what inner independence gives you, the ability to feel content even when no one is clapping for you. So remember this, the day you stop needing anyone to make you feel alive, you are no longer half a person waiting to be completed. You are whole, you are awake, and that's when life truly begins. 2. Loneliness is an invitation, not a curse. Most people fear loneliness like it's a disease. They run from silence, fill every empty moment with noise, and surround themselves with people who distract them from their own thoughts. But Buddhism teaches something radically different, that loneliness is not a punishment, it is an invitation. It is life's way of pulling you back to yourself. When the world grows quiet and there's no one left to talk to, that's not the end of something. It's the beginning of self-discovery. Loneliness only feels painful when we misunderstand it. The discomfort you feel when you're alone isn't coming from solitude itself. It's coming from resistance. You're not hurting because you're alone. You're hurting because you believe you shouldn't be. You've been taught that being alone means being unwanted or unloved. But in truth, solitude is the purest space for growth. The great masters, monks, and enlightened ones did not find peace in crowds. They found it in silence, in stillness, in the quiet corners of their own souls. When you stop fearing loneliness and begin to accept it, something powerful happens. Your inner voice grows louder. You begin to hear the parts of yourself that were buried under years of external noise. You notice your thoughts, your emotions, your desires, and for the first time, you start understanding who you really are. Most people go their entire lives never meeting themselves because they are always running from solitude. They fill their lives with people who make them feel less empty but never truly full. Buddhism views solitude as sacred space, a temple without walls. It's in those moments alone that your spirit can breathe, your mind can heal, and your soul can realign with truth. In loneliness, you start noticing the beauty you've ignored, the sound of your breath, the warmth of sunlight, the rhythm of your heart. These small details become gateways into deeper awareness. Every moment of loneliness is also a mirror. It reflects back your fears, your insecurities, and your hidden pain. This is why solitude feels uncomfortable. It exposes everything you've avoided. But that exposure is a blessing, because once you face your emptiness, you learn that there's nothing to fear inside it. The silence you once ran from becomes the silence that restores you. Think of a seed buried deep in the soil. It grows in darkness, in isolation, without applause or recognition. Yet it is that very isolation that allows it to transform. The same happens with your soul. When life isolates you, it's not rejecting you, it's preparing you to grow roots. The people who once left were never meant to stay forever. Their absence created the space for you to finally meet yourself. So when you find yourself alone, don't rush to escape the feeling. Sit with it. Let it speak. Ask what it's trying to teach you. Because hidden inside your loneliness is a doorway to peace, wisdom, and self-realization. When you learn to walk through it without fear, you'll see what the Buddha meant when he said, "You cannot travel the path until you have become the path itself." When you embrace loneliness, it loses its power to hurt you. What once felt like emptiness becomes serenity. What once felt like isolation becomes clarity. That's when you realize you were never truly alone. You were simply being guided back home to yourself. 3. Detachment doesn't mean you stop loving. One of the greatest misunderstandings about Buddhism is the idea that detachment means you must stop loving people or withdraw from the world. But in truth, detachment doesn't kill love. It purifies it. It transforms love from something possessive and fearful into something vast, peaceful, and unconditional. The Buddha never taught people to stop caring. He taught them to care without clinging to love, not as a beggar desperate for attention, but as a soul overflowing with inner abundance. When you love with attachment, you don't truly love, you depend. You hold someone tightly not because you value them, but because you fear losing them. You want them to fill a void within you, to fix your loneliness, to make you feel complete. But that kind of love is a transaction, not a gift. It's rooted in insecurity, not understanding. And when that person changes, withdraws, or leaves, your world collapses, because your peace was built on something that was never yours to control. The Buddha taught that real love is freedom, not control. It's the ability to say, "I love you, but I don't need you to make me whole." When you detach from the illusion that someone else holds your happiness, you free both yourself and them. Love then becomes lighter, calmer, and far more beautiful. You no longer demand that others behave a certain way to keep you peaceful. You simply appreciate them as they are, imperfect, temporary, and human. Detachment doesn't turn you cold, it makes you wise. You begin to see that every connection, no matter how deep, exists within the flow of impermanence. People come into your life for a reason, stay for a while, and then move on when their role is complete. The pain begins when you resist this natural rhythm. You try to freeze what is meant to move. You try to own what was never meant to be owned. Detachment is the art of loving fully without chaining yourself to the outcome. Think about a flower in a garden. You can enjoy its beauty without plucking it. The moment you try to possess it, you begin its decay. That's how attachment works. The moment you cling, you destroy the very peace you seek. True love says, I want you to be happy, even if that happiness doesn't include me. That is not weakness, that is spiritual strength. It is love that flows from compassion, not need. The Buddha once said, to understand everything is to forgive everything. When you practice detachment, you begin to see life from this higher perspective. You realize that everyone you meet is fighting their own battles, shaped by their own karma. You stop taking things personally. You stop demanding constant reassurance. You begin to love others as a reflection of your own peace, not as a cure for your wounds. And here's the paradox. When you stop clinging, love actually deepens. It becomes purer because it's no longer about possession, it's about presence. You enjoy each moment together without fear of the future. You love more honestly because you no longer hide behind expectations. You give, not because you expect something in return, but because giving feels like breathing, natural and effortless. So remember, detachment is not about walking away from love. It's about walking away from the illusion that love can be controlled. It's about trusting that what's meant for you will remain without you forcing it. When you reach this level of awareness, your heart becomes vast, like the sky, open and still, holding everything but attached to nothing. In that space, you realize something profound. You can love deeply, yet remain free. You can care immensely, yet never suffer. Because real love isn't about holding on. It's about letting things and people flow through your life while your peace remains untouched. That's the essence of Buddhist detachment. Not less love, but limitless love. 4. The mind creates need. Awareness destroys it. Most of the suffering in your life doesn't come from what happens to you. It comes from what your mind tells you about what happens. The Buddha called the mind a restless monkey, always jumping from one thought to another, creating endless stories about what you lack, what you deserve, and what you must chase to be happy. This is how the cycle of need begins. Your mind whispers, you need someone to love you. You need more attention. You need to be understood. You need to be seen. And before you realize it, you become a servant to those whispers, chasing approval, comfort, and connection to feel whole. But here's the truth that Buddhism gently reveals. The mind is the creator of need, and awareness is the destroyer of it. The moment you become aware of your mind's tricks, when you simply observe without reacting, the illusion of need begins to dissolve. You realize that you were never truly incomplete. You were simply lost in thought. Your mind kept replaying stories about who you should be, what you should have, and who you should be with, and you believed them. But awareness exposes those stories as just that, stories, not reality. When you're not aware, the mind rules you. It convinces you that happiness lies somewhere else, in a person, in success, in validation. You spend your life chasing shadows that disappear the moment you catch them. But when awareness awakens, you stop chasing and start seeing. You recognize the root of all craving, the belief that something outside you must complete what's inside you. Once that belief collapses, peace enters naturally. not because you achieved something, but because you stopped resisting what already is. Awareness is not something you gain, it's something you return to. It's your original state before the noise of the mind took over. Imagine sitting quietly by a still lake. When the wind stirs the water, the reflection becomes distorted and you can't see your face clearly. But when the wind stops, the surface becomes calm again, and your reflection appears effortlessly. That stillness is awareness. The wind is your restless mind. Every time you bring your attention back to the present moment, the waves settle and your true self becomes visible again. When you start observing your mind, watching your thoughts rise and fall without judgment, something profound happens. You begin to realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the one who sees them. The mind may say, "I'm lonely," but awareness replies, "I am here." The mind may panic, "I need them to stay," but awareness calmly observes, "This too will pass." And in that moment of observation, the storm loses its power. Buddhism teaches that need is a product of ignorance, the ignorance of not knowing who you truly are. You think you're this fragile being who must cling to others to survive. But awareness reveals that you are already whole, already complete. Every time you stop identifying with your thoughts and rest in awareness, you step out of illusion and into freedom. You no longer beg life to fill you. You realize you were never empty. Try this simple practice. The next time your mind tells you that you need someone, pause. Instead of believing it, look at the thought. Where does it arise from? What feeling accompanies it? What happens if you simply don't react? You'll notice the thought fades on its own, like a wave returning to the ocean. That's the power of awareness. It doesn't fight the mind, it outshines it. Awareness transforms relationships too. When you're unconscious, you project your insecurities onto others. You expect them to heal wounds they didn't create. You crave constant reassurance because you haven't yet found peace inside. But when you awaken, you stop demanding others to fix you. You bring your own stillness into the relationship, and love becomes lighter, cleaner, more peaceful. You stop asking, "What can I get?" and start asking, "What can I give?" That's the shift from unconscious need to conscious presence. Think of your awareness as sunlight. No matter how dark a room may be, the moment sunlight enters, the darkness disappears effortlessly. The same happens within you. The moment you bring awareness to your thoughts, fears, and cravings, they lose their grip. You realize they were never real, just temporary clouds passing through the vast sky of your consciousness. The mind loves to complicate life. Awareness simplifies it. The mind divides you from the world. Awareness reunites you with it. The mind creates endless desires. Awareness reveals that everything you were seeking is already here, in this breath, in this moment. So, when your mind tells you that you need someone to complete you, smile gently and listen, not to obey, but to understand. Observe how that thought rises, trembles, and fades. Don't feed it with reaction, just watch. That's how awareness wins, not through force, but through understanding. When you live in awareness, life stops feeling like a chase and starts feeling like a dance. You move with life, not against it. You stop grabbing and start flowing. The Buddha said, "When you realize how perfect everything is, you will tilt your head back and laugh at the sky." That laughter comes from freedom. The freedom of knowing that you no longer need anything outside yourself to feel whole. And that is the beauty of awareness. It doesn't just destroy need, it replaces it with peace. It shows you that the happiness you've been chasing was never out there. It was quietly waiting inside you, beneath the noise of your mind, all along. 5. The more you let go, the more life flows. One of the deepest truths the Buddha ever revealed is this: suffering is born from clinging. The tighter you hold on to things, people, outcomes, identities, or expectations, the more pain you invite into your life. Letting go isn't about giving up, it's about giving freedom to life, to others, and most importantly, to yourself. In Buddhism, letting go is not an act of loss, but an act of liberation. It's the moment when you stop fighting the current of existence and allow it to carry you where you're meant to go. The human mind loves control. We want things to stay the same. We want people to act the way we expect, and we want life to unfold exactly as we imagine. But life doesn't bend to our desires. It flows according to its own rhythm. The harder you resist that rhythm, the more exhausted you become. You start to feel anxious, afraid, and disappointed, because reality refuses to match your expectations. This is what the Buddha meant by attachment being the root of suffering. The moment you cling to how things should be, you lose your ability to appreciate how things are. Letting go is the art of surrendering to the impermanence of all things. Everything you love, everything you fear, everything you fight for, it's all in constant motion. People change, circumstances evolve, emotions shift, and seasons pass. You can try to hold on, but time will still move forward. To let go is to stop resisting this truth and start flowing with it. The river of life was never meant to be held, it was meant to be followed. Think of water. It flows effortlessly around obstacles because it doesn't resist them. If a rock appears in its path, water doesn't fight it. It moves around it, finds another way, and continues its journey. That's how we are meant to live, adaptable, flexible, at peace with change. But when you resist change, you become like stagnant water, trapped, heavy, and full of frustration. Letting go allows you to move again, to breathe again, to grow again. When you let go of needing things to stay the same, you make space for better things to enter. Many people don't realize how much of their pain comes from holding on to things that no longer serve them. We cling to relationships that drain us, to past mistakes that haunt us, to identities that no longer fit who we are becoming. We hold on because we fear emptiness. But that emptiness you're afraid of, that space left behind when you finally release something, is not a void, it's a womb. It's the place where new life begins to form. In Buddhism, impermanence is not a sad truth, it's a sacred one. It means nothing lasts, but it also means nothing bad lasts either. Every pain, every loss, every storm is temporary. When you cling to what's gone, you keep suffering alive. When you let it go, you allow healing to begin. The tree does not cry for the leaves it loses each autumn. It trusts that new ones will grow in spring. In the same way, when you let go of what has ended, you create space for new blessings to take root. Letting go also means releasing the illusion of control. You cannot control what others think of you, how they treat you, or what destiny brings, but you can control your response. When you stop trying to control every outcome, your heart relaxes. You stop trying to predict and start learning to trust. Trust that life knows what it's doing. Trust that sometimes rejection is protection. Trust that sometimes endings are redirections. You'll notice that life flows differently when you stop forcing it. The right people stay without pressure. The right opportunities appear without struggle. Peace replaces panic. The universe doesn't reward control, it rewards surrender. Because surrender isn't weakness, it's alignment. It's saying, I no longer fight what is. I open myself to what will be. There's a Zen teaching that says, let go or be dragged. When you cling to what's falling apart, you suffer. When you hold on to what's trying to leave, you get dragged by it. The pain you feel isn't from the situation itself. It's from your refusal to release it. You must understand, letting go doesn't mean you don't care anymore. It means you care so much that you allow life to unfold naturally, without interference. The Buddha compared attachment to holding a rope tightly while being pulled. The more you resist, the more it burns your hand. If you simply let go, the pain stops instantly. It's that simple, yet our egos make it difficult. We believe holding on shows strength, but in truth, it only shows fear. Real strength lies in trusting that what's meant for you will remain without you needing to grip it so tightly. Try reflecting on this. Every time you've lost something you thought you couldn't live without, didn't life go on? Didn't you grow stronger, wiser, and more grounded? That's the hidden beauty of letting go. It teaches you that peace doesn't come from what you hold on to, but from what you release. When you let go of control, you rediscover flow. When you let go of pain, you rediscover peace. The world moves in cycles: creation, growth, decay, renewal. When you cling to one part of the cycle, you resist life itself. But when you surrender to the flow, you align with the very heartbeat of the universe. Everything starts to make sense again. You begin to realize that every ending is a beginning in disguise. Every goodbye is a path towards something greater. So, let life flow. Let people come and go. Let moments rise and fall. Don't hold on so tightly that your hands can't receive new blessings. The more you let go, the more life begins to move effortlessly through you. You stop being a prisoner of your past and become a participant in the present. You stop fearing change and start dancing with it. And that's when real freedom begins. When you stop grasping, stop forcing, stop controlling. You relax into the rhythm of life and realize you were never meant to swim against the current. You were meant to flow with it, because the more you let go, the more life flows. Not away from you, but through you. 6. Silence builds spiritual power. In a world that worships noise, silence has become a forgotten art, yet it is the most powerful teacher you will ever find. The Buddha often retreated into long periods of silence because he understood something profound. Silence is not emptiness, it is energy. It is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of awareness. When you stop talking, stop chasing, and stop reacting, you begin to hear life in a deeper way. You start to sense things that can't be heard with the ears. The quiet pulse of your own existence, the rhythm of your breath, the subtle whisper of truth that was always inside you. Most people fear silence because they've never learned how to be alone with themselves. The moment things get quiet, their mind starts shouting. Regrets, anxieties, self-doubt, memories, unfinished conversations. They reach for their phone, turn on music, or distract themselves with noise because silence forces them to face what they've buried. But here's the secret. What feels uncomfortable at first is actually the beginning of transformation. When you finally sit with the noise inside you and allow it to pass, silence begins to reveal its gifts: clarity, calmness, and wisdom. The Buddha taught that the mind is like muddy water. When you stir it, it remains cloudy, but when you let it sit in stillness, the dirt settles and the water becomes clear. Silence does that for your spirit. It lets the turbulence of your emotions settle so you can see your inner truth clearly. You start to understand your reactions, your desires, and your patterns, not through books or lectures, but through direct experience. In silence, you meet yourself. Silence is the foundation of spiritual power because it gives birth to awareness. When you are silent, you begin to observe rather than react. You become aware of how thoughts rise and fall like waves. You begin to see how emotions come and go, and that you are not bound to any of them. Each time you return to silence, you take a step away from the chaos of the world and a step closer to your true center. You stop being tossed around by every noise and opinion, and instead, you move from a place of quiet knowing. Think of silence as the training ground of the soul. Every sage, monk, or enlightened being throughout history has used silence as their greatest weapon. Warriors train their bodies, but awakened ones train their minds, and their arena is stillness. When you can remain silent in the face of chaos, when you can hear insult but not absorb it, when you can observe pain without drowning in it, that is true power. That is what it means to master yourself. In silence, you also begin to realize how much of life's noise is unnecessary. So many of our conversations are driven by ego, by the need to prove, defend, or impress. But silence teaches humility. It reminds you that wisdom doesn't always need words. Sometimes the most powerful response is presence itself. When you are deeply silent, You radiate a calm energy that others can feel. You no longer try to dominate with your voice. Your peace speaks for you. Buddhism teaches the concept of noble silence. It's not about refusing to speak. It's about speaking only from awareness. Most people react instantly to emotions, anger, pride, fear, and their words become weapons. But when you learn the discipline of silence, you create a sacred pause between thought and action. In that pause lies your freedom. You choose your words consciously. You speak to heal, not to hurt. You communicate truthfully, not impulsively. Silence also deepens your connection to life itself. When you stop filling every moment with sound, you start noticing the world's natural symphony. The sound of wind moving through trees, the gentle hum of your own breath, the heartbeat of existence. You begin to feel that everything is alive and connected. You no longer feel lonely in your solitude because silence itself becomes your companion, one that never judges, never leaves, and never demands. Spending time in silence also strengthens intuition. The mind is loud, but the soul whispers. You can't hear that whisper until the noise quiets down. Many people pray for guidance but never stop talking long enough to listen. Silence is the listening side of prayer. It's where answers come, not in thunder, but in the soft realization that arises when you are still. As you practice silence, your relationship with the world changes. You stop reacting to everything. You start observing. You notice how people constantly speak to fill emptiness, but you no longer feel that need. You understand that silence doesn't mean weakness, it means mastery. You realize that not every battle requires your voice. Some battles are won through stillness, through restraint, through calm energy that refuses to be disturbed. The greatest transformation happens when you can carry that inner silence into your daily life. You don't have to live in a cave or monastery. You just have to remain inwardly still while the world moves around you. You can work, talk, and live among others, yet remain anchored in a deep internal quiet. That's when silence becomes power, not as something you practice, but as something you are. Remember, the storms of life can't shake you when you've rooted yourself in silence. Anger, fear, and noise may come and go, but your stillness remains unbroken. The Buddha once said, "Peace comes from within, do not seek it without." Silence is how you enter that within. It's how you meet the source of all peace. So make time each day to sit in silence, even for a few minutes. No distractions, no screens, no noise. Just you, your breath, and the awareness of being alive. At first, it might feel like nothing is happening, but slowly, you'll feel something powerful awakening inside you, a deep, unshakable calm that no chaos can touch. That is the essence of spiritual power, because silence isn't emptiness, it's full of truth. It's where your spirit breathes, it's where the soul remembers who it is. And once you've tasted that inner stillness, the world's noise no longer controls you, because now you've found something far greater, the soundless strength of peace. 7. Wholeness comes when you realize you were never broken. All your life, you've been told that you need fixing, that something about you isn't enough. The world teaches you to chase completion through people, possessions, achievements, or validation. You keep searching for the missing piece, believing that if you find the right person, the right job, or the right success, then finally you'll feel whole. But Buddhism teaches a far more profound truth. You were never broken to begin with. What you call healing is not about becoming something new, but remembering what you already are. Beneath all your fears, regrets, and stories, you are pure awareness, whole, complete, and untouched by anything that has ever happened to you. The feeling of incompleteness doesn't come from your soul, it comes from your mind. The mind constantly compares, judges, and labels you based on external standards. It whispers that you're not as successful, not as loved, not as worthy as others. And so you spend your life trying to fill the emptiness with temporary things. You cling to relationships hoping they'll make you feel seen. You chase recognition, hoping it'll make you feel valuable. You collect achievements, hoping they'll make you feel whole. Yet every time the high fades, the emptiness returns, because no external thing can fill an internal illusion. Buddhism teaches that the self you think is broken is only a mask, a collection of experiences, memories, and opinions that you've mistaken for who you are. But beneath all of it lies your true nature, infinite awareness, untouched by failure or pain. Imagine the sky on a cloudy day. The clouds may hide the sun, but they never destroy it. The sun remains radiant and untouched. In the same way, your true self remains perfect even when covered by clouds of doubt, fear, or sadness. The problem is not that you are broken, it's that you've forgotten the sky beneath the clouds. To realize your wholeness, you must first stop identifying with your wounds. Pain will visit everyone, but suffering happens when you start believing that pain defines you. When someone leaves, you say, "I am abandoned." When you fail, you say, "I am worthless." When life hurts, you say, "I am broken." But these are just temporary experiences, not your identity. You experience sadness. You are not sadness. You feel rejection. You are not rejection. The moment you create distance between who you truly are and what you temporarily feel, healing begins. The Buddha once said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." Think about that. You deserve the same compassion you give to others. Yet most people spend their entire lives offering kindness outward and cruelty inward. They forgive others but punish themselves. They nurture others but neglect their own souls. True healing begins when you turn that love inward, when you stop demanding perfection and start accepting your humanity. You can only realize your wholeness when you stop fighting yourself. In Buddhism, this realization is known as awakening. It's not about becoming something greater. It's about waking up to the truth that you already are. The ego thrives on incompleteness. It keeps you busy chasing an image of perfection that doesn't exist. But awakening ends that chase. It reveals that peace was never outside you. It was buried beneath layers of seeking. You were never missing anything. You were simply distracted by everything. Take a moment to reflect. How many times have you believed that your happiness depended on someone else's presence? How often have you thought, if only they loved me, if only they came back, if only I achieved this goal, I'd finally be okay. But every if only is a trap. It postpones your peace. It convinces you that happiness is somewhere else, in a future moment or another person, when in reality, it's always been here, in this breath, in this moment. The truth is that nothing needs to be added to you for you to be complete. The only thing missing is your recognition of that truth. Buddhist teachings often use the image of a lotus flower. It grows in muddy water but remains unstained. The mud represents pain, loss, and hardship. The lotus is your true self. Life's mud doesn't corrupt you, it strengthens you. The mud gives birth to the flower. Likewise, every heartbreak, every disappointment, every failure has shaped your wisdom and deepened your compassion. Nothing you've been through has broken you. It has revealed you. The cracks you think ruined you are actually where the light enters. When you stop chasing completion, something magical happens. Peace returns. You no longer live with the anxiety of becoming. You rest in the freedom of being. You stop trying to prove your worth because you feel it. You stop begging for love because you are it. You stop trying to escape solitude because you finally see that you were never truly alone. Awareness has always been with you, quietly watching, waiting for you to notice. In moments of deep silence, when the noise of the world fades, you can feel this truth. There's a quiet presence behind every thought, a still awareness watching every feeling. That awareness has never been hurt, never been abandoned, never been unworthy. It has seen every joy and every sorrow, yet it remains untouched. That's who you really are, not the story you tell yourself, but the awareness beneath it. To live from that awareness is to be free. You no longer react to every wound. You respond with wisdom. You no longer seek constant reassurance. You rest in self-trust. You no longer fear change because you realize the essence of you cannot change. You are like the ocean. Waves rise and fall, but the depth remains still. No storm can touch it. When you finally see yourself as whole, your relationships transform too. You no longer love to fill an emptiness. You love to share abundance. You no longer cling to others for stability. You meet them as two complete beings walking the same path. You stop trying to control love because you no longer fear losing it. When you are whole, love flows freely, not as a need, but as a gift. The greatest illusion the mind creates is separation, the idea that you are incomplete and must seek wholeness outside. The moment you dissolve that illusion, the chase ends. You begin to see everything as part of one flow, every event, every loss, every person who entered or left your life, all perfectly timed to bring you back to yourself. True wholeness doesn't mean you'll never feel pain again. It means pain will no longer define you. You'll still experience storms, but you'll face them differently. Calm, grounded, unshaken. You'll know that you can walk through the fire without burning, because you've discovered the part of you that is indestructible. So if you feel broken today, remember, the cracks in your heart are not flaws. They are openings. Stop trying to fix yourself. You were never broken. You are simply unfolding. You are not a puzzle missing pieces. You are the entire picture, vast, complete, divine. The Buddha said, "In the end, these things matter most. How well did you love? How fully did you live? How deeply did you let go? When you stop needing anyone, when you stop searching for something to complete you, when you finally turn inward and see the truth, you realize that life itself has always been whole, and so have you. You are not a fragment of the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself through a human form. And once you awaken to that truth, nothing can make you feel small again, because real life, the life free from illusion, free from dependency, free from fear, begins the moment you realize you were never broken, and you never needed anyone to make you whole. 8. The power of being alone, where real life truly begins. There comes a sacred moment in every person's life when silence becomes louder than any conversation, when solitude becomes more comforting than company, and when you realize that being alone is not loneliness, it is liberation. Buddhism teaches that the path to awakening begins not in temples, not in rituals, but in the stillness of your own heart. Because when you're finally alone, when the noise fades and there's no one left to impress or depend on, that's when you begin to meet yourself. Not the version the world wants, but the truth that's always been beneath the surface. Most people spend their lives running from aloneness. They fill their days with distractions, conversations, and endless scrolling just to avoid the quiet. Why? Because silence is confronting. It exposes the illusions you've built, the masks you wear, the roles you play, and the identities you cling to. It forces you to face the emptiness you've been trying to fill with people and possessions. But Buddhism reveals the paradox. It's only when you stop running from yourself that you start discovering who you truly are. When you are alone, there's no one left to mirror your worth. The ego panics because it has no audience to perform for. It says, "Without others, who am I?" But that question is not a curse. It's an invitation. It's the universe whispering, "Now you can finally find out." The Buddha discovered enlightenment not through company but through solitude, by sitting under the Bodhi tree, confronting his own mind. He faced fear, temptation, and doubt alone, and through that stillness he transcended them all. That is the power of solitude. It strips away illusion until only truth remains. Being alone teaches you something no crowd ever can. that peace is not something you find outside. It's something you generate inside. When you depend on others to make you feel happy or important, you hand over your freedom. You become a puppet whose strings are pulled by others' opinions. But when you learn to enjoy your own company, when you can sit in a quiet room and feel complete, that's when you reclaim your power. You stop begging the world to fill you because you realize you already have everything you need within. There's a deep difference between loneliness and aloneness. Loneliness is the absence of others. Aloneness is the presence of yourself. Loneliness cries, "I am empty." Aloneness whispers, "I am whole." Loneliness seeks comfort outside. Aloneness finds it within. When you shift from loneliness to aloneness, your solitude transforms from a prison into a sanctuary. You begin to see that silence isn't your enemy. It's your mirror, reflecting the truth of your inner world. In solitude, your senses sharpen. You begin to notice details that the rush of life hides: the rhythm of your breath, the distant hum of the wind, the subtle pulse of your own heartbeat. You start to see how much beauty you've been missing by constantly chasing stimulation. Solitude reconnects you with life itself. It slows everything down until you can finally feel the present moment, not as a passing second, but as an infinite living reality. Most people fear being alone because they equate it with weakness or rejection. Society tells you that if you're alone, something must be wrong with you. But in truth, solitude is strength. It's where you learn emotional independence, where you stop relying on external approval to feel secure. Think of the great trees that stand alone on mountain tops. They've endured storms, winds, and lightning, yet they stand firm, not because they had company, but because their roots grew deep in isolation. That's what solitude does for the soul. It deepens your roots. When you are alone, you learn self-reliance. You learn how to comfort yourself instead of waiting for someone to save you. You learn how to motivate yourself instead of needing applause. You learn how to listen to your intuition instead of begging for advice. Solitude teaches you emotional self-sufficiency, the ability to be your own home, your own peace, your own strength. Buddhism teaches that the greatest prison is attachment. When you constantly depend on others for emotional survival, you live as a prisoner chained to their actions. One word, one absence, one rejection, and your peace shatters. But when you master aloneness, you become unshakable. You still love deeply, but you no longer lose yourself in love. You still care, but you no longer depend. You still connect, but from a place of freedom, not need. There's a story from Zen tradition. A monk once asked his master, "What is enlightenment?" The master replied, "When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep." The monk didn't understand at first. It sounded too simple. But the master meant that enlightenment is living fully in the present, without seeking anything outside this moment. Solitude teaches you the same truth: to eat when you eat, to breathe when you breathe, to simply be in aloneness. Every act becomes sacred because you're no longer distracted. You become one with whatever you do. When you start embracing solitude, your relationship with the world changes. You no longer chase people who don't value you. You stop explaining yourself to those who misunderstand you. You stop begging for love because your heart becomes your own sanctuary. The more you enjoy your own presence, the less you tolerate fake company. You begin to see that not everyone deserves access to your peace. Solitude filters your circle naturally. It removes the noise and leaves only truth behind. There's an ancient Buddhist saying, "When you realize how perfect everything is, you will tilt your head back and laugh at the sky." You reach that point when you stop resisting solitude, when you can sit alone and laugh, not because life is perfect, but because you finally understand it doesn't need to be. You stop fighting the flow of existence and start moving with it. You start noticing that everything you were searching for, clarity, strength, peace, love, was always hiding beneath the noise of constant company. Solitude also gives birth to creativity and insight. All great wisdom, art, and breakthroughs have come from minds that dared to be alone. When you disconnect from the collective noise, your own voice grows stronger. You start hearing the ideas and intuitions that were drowned out by others' opinions. You start seeing patterns in life, understanding yourself, and aligning with your deeper purpose. The Buddha, Einstein, Rumi, and countless awakened souls found their greatest revelations not in crowds, but in silence. Because silence doesn't take away from you, it reveals you. Being alone also teaches you compassion, not the shallow kind that pities, but the deep kind that understands. When you've sat with your own pain, you become kinder to others. You stop judging because you've seen how hard it is just to be human. Solitude softens you. It removes the need to be right, to be admired, to be understood. You become content simply being. And from that contentment, unconditional love arises naturally. Yet the beauty of mastering solitude is that it doesn't make you antisocial. It makes you authentic. You no longer enter relationships out of fear of being alone. You enter them from wholeness. You don't need people to fill you. You choose them to grow with you. You can walk beside others without losing your center. That's real connection, not two halves clinging to survive, but two wholes walking freely together. The Buddha once said, "No one saves us but ourselves. No one can, and no one may." We ourselves must walk the path, and that's what solitude really is, walking your path. No one else can do your inner work for you. No one else can quiet your mind, heal your wounds, or awaken your soul. You can have guidance, love, and companionship, but the final journey, the journey inward, must be made alone. It is not punishment, it's the price of awakening. As you walk that path, you'll discover that being alone is not the end of love. It's the beginning of self-love. It's not the end of connection. It's the foundation of real connection. Because when you no longer fear solitude, you become free, and freedom is where real life begins. In your aloneness, you'll learn to appreciate the simplest moments, the sound of rain, the warmth of sunlight, the quiet hum of life. You'll find beauty in stillness, not because it gives you excitement, but because it gives you peace. You'll learn to trust the flow of existence, to stop forcing, to stop chasing, to stop expecting, and instead, to simply live. So, the next time life leaves you alone, don't rush to fill the space. Sit in it, feel it, breathe it. Because that emptiness is not a void, it's a mirror. It's showing you that you were never missing anyone, you were missing yourself. And once you find that self, calm, whole, and unbothered, you'll realize something extraordinary. That real life, true life, begins the moment you stop needing anyone and start feeling at home in your own soul. In that moment, you're not just alone, you are one with everything. You become like a mountain, unmoved by storms, untouched by praise, content in your own existence. You no longer chase light because you've discovered that the light was always shining from within. That's the moment of true awakening. Real life doesn't begin when someone loves you, validates you, or completes you. It begins when you look within and see that you were whole all along. It begins when you stop running from silence and start resting in it. It begins when you stop needing anyone, not out of pride, but because you finally found the divine peace of your own presence. That's when you understand what the Buddha meant when he said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." Because the real journey, the one that leads to freedom, wisdom, and peace, begins not when you're surrounded by others, but when you are finally, beautifully, unafraid to be alone. 9. When you master being alone, you master life itself. There comes a stage in your spiritual evolution when being alone is no longer something you endure. It becomes something you cherish. You stop seeing solitude as an absence and start seeing it as a sacred presence. It's the presence of your own soul, unfiltered by noise, undistracted by expectations, unshaken by the opinions of others. Buddhism calls this state contentment without conditions, a freedom so complete that nothing external can disturb it. When you master being alone, you master the art of living itself. Most people fear being alone because it exposes them. It removes the masks they wear in front of the world. Alone, there's no one left to blame, no one to impress, no one to distract you from the voice inside. That voice is the mirror of your inner world, the echo of your true state. If you are restless, it speaks in chaos. If you are at peace, it whispers wisdom. But most people never hear that wisdom because they drown it out with constant motion, endless conversations, social media, work, entertainment, anything to avoid silence. The Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." Yet we spend our lives doing the opposite. We seek happiness in relationships, purpose in possessions, and identity in recognition. We attach our peace to fragile things, and when they fall apart, we call it heartbreak, disappointment, or failure. But what we're really experiencing is dependency collapsing. Solitude teaches you to detach from that dependency, not by pushing the world away, but by discovering that peace doesn't need anything to exist. It's already within you, waiting beneath the noise. To master being alone is to step beyond fear. When you first sit in solitude, the silence feels uncomfortable, even heavy. Your mind resists it because it can no longer hide behind distraction. Every thought you've ignored, every insecurity, regret, or doubt rises to the surface. This is why solitude is powerful. It's not peaceful at first because it's purifying. It exposes your attachments so you can release them. It shows you the truth of your own mind. You begin to see how much of your suffering came not from life itself, but from your own resistance to it. As you sit in that silence, something miraculous happens. Slowly, the chaos begins to settle. The racing thoughts start to fade. You begin to breathe differently, not hurried, but deep and aware. The space that once felt empty now feels alive. You start feeling the quiet pulse of existence flowing through you. You start sensing a presence, still, vast, unchanging. That presence is you, the real you, the consciousness that exists beyond identity. You realize you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your fears. You are the awareness that sees them all come and go. That realization changes everything. When you master being alone, you stop clinging to impermanent things. You stop chasing validation. You stop needing to be understood, accepted, or praised. You begin to understand that what people think of you says more about their state of consciousness than about your worth. You start walking through the world lighter, calmer, freer. You no longer crave to fit in because you finally fit into yourself. Buddhism teaches that life is suffering, not because the world is cruel, but because the human mind clings to what is transient. Everything in this world, every relationship, every emotion, every success, is in a state of constant change. The more you cling, the more you suffer. Solitude is the medicine for that suffering because it teaches you detachment through experience. When you can sit alone without craving, without needing, without reaching for something to fill the space, you transcend the cycle of craving and pain. You discover the serenity that exists beyond wanting. To master solitude is to master balance. It doesn't mean you isolate yourself from the world. It means you learn to interact with it from a place of fullness, not emptiness. You can love people deeply without becoming addicted to them. You can pursue goals passionately without being enslaved by them. You can enjoy success without being defined by it. When your happiness no longer depends on outcomes, you move through life with unshakable peace. Think of a candle flame in a still room. It burns steadily, without flicker, but in a room full of wind, it trembles constantly. The candle is your mind, the wind is external noise. Solitude stills the air around you so that your flame can burn clearly again. When you spend time in silence, you learn to protect that flame, to keep it steady no matter how chaotic the world becomes. Buddhist monks spend years cultivating this state through meditation, but you don't have to live in a monastery to experience it. Every person can practice solitude. in a quiet morning walk, in moments before sleep, in the simple act of sitting still and breathing. The key is to stop filling every gap with distraction. The more you allow space, the more life reveals its depth. When you master being alone, you also begin to see life as it truly is. Without the noise of constant opinions, you start perceiving reality with clarity. You stop projecting desires onto people and events. You see that everything is temporary: joy, sorrow, pleasure, pain, all part of the same dance. And when you stop resisting that dance, you find peace even in imperfection. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this teaching me?" Every moment becomes a lesson, every challenge a mirror, every silence a teacher. Solitude also transforms your relationship with time. When you're always distracted, time feels scarce. You rush, chase, and never feel enough. But in solitude, time expands. Minutes feel like hours, and yet they feel light. You become fully present. You realize that the past is gone, the future hasn't arrived, and the only place you've ever truly lived is here, now. That's when you begin to live, not in memory, not in hope, but in presence. You start to notice something else too. The world's noise no longer overwhelms you. You can be surrounded by people and still feel inwardly silent. You can be in chaos and still feel peace. This is the mark of a master. Someone who carries silence within, no matter where they are. You no longer depend on the environment to dictate your state. You bring your own state to the environment. Being alone also reveals a deeper truth about love. When you can be alone happily, you no longer enter relationships from a place of need, but from abundance. You stop asking others to complete you because you already feel complete. You stop fearing loss because you know you'll remain whole regardless. You stop clinging because you've learned the art of letting be. Paradoxically, this makes your love purer. It's no longer selfish or demanding. It becomes unconditional, the kind of love that doesn't chain but liberates. The Buddha said, "To love without attachment is to know peace." Solitude is where you learn that love. You realize that real love doesn't mean possessing someone, it means seeing them clearly, understanding their impermanence and loving them anyway. You can walk beside them without fear because you've already made peace with being alone. When you master solitude, even pain transforms. You stop asking life to take your pain away and start asking what it's teaching you. You see that pain was never meant to punish you, it was meant to wake you up. Every heartbreak, every rejection, every disappointment you once hated becomes sacred because it pushed you closer to this understanding that peace isn't found in control, but in surrender. Mastering aloneness doesn't make you indifferent, it makes you deeply alive. You start appreciating small things, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of rain, the stillness of night. You no longer need big moments to feel joy. The ordinary becomes extraordinary because you're finally paying attention. This is what the Zen masters meant when they said, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water." Life doesn't change, your awareness does. You begin to live life as a meditation. Every step, every breath, every act becomes sacred. You stop chasing meaning and start creating it. You stop trying to fill time and start inhabiting it fully. That's the beauty of solitude. It reconnects you with the essence of being itself. And here's the greatest irony. Once you truly master being alone, you're never lonely again. You realize you were never truly separate from anything. You feel an invisible thread connecting you to all existence. The trees, the sky, the stars, every living being. You understand that solitude doesn't isolate you from the world, it unites you with it. When you sit alone in silence, you don't disappear, you expand. You dissolve into the rhythm of the universe and feel, maybe for the first time, that you belong everywhere. That is the heart of Buddhist wisdom. That wholeness was never something to achieve, but something to remember. You've been complete from the beginning. You've just been too distracted to notice. So if life has brought you to a place of solitude, don't resist it. Sit with it. Listen to it. Learn from it. Because the person who learns to stand peacefully alone cannot be broken by anything. They walk through the world not needing, not clinging, not fearing, just being. When you reach that state, you've mastered the greatest art of all, the art of living freely. You no longer seek to escape life, you flow with it. You no longer chase meaning, you are meaning. And when others look at you and wonder how you remain so calm, so centered, so free, you'll smile because you know the secret. Real life begins not when you find someone to walk with, but when you finally learn to walk alone. That is the power of solitude. That is the ultimate freedom. And that is the beginning of real life. 10. The journey within, where real life finally awakens. There comes a point in every human life when the outer world loses its power to satisfy. The applause no longer feels fulfilling, the company no longer quiets the noise inside, and the pursuit of more love, more status, more attention, begins to feel hollow. That's the moment when your soul begins whispering a deeper invitation. Come home. Buddhism calls this the return to the self. The awakening that happens when you stop looking outward for meaning and turn inward to discover the truth that was waiting all along, because the ultimate journey is not out there, it's within. From birth, you've been conditioned to seek yourself in everything outside of you. Society teaches you that happiness is something you earn, that worth is something you prove, and that peace is something you find once the world finally gives you permission to rest. But every chase ends the same way, with exhaustion, because no matter how much you acquire, the satisfaction fades. Why? Because the self you're trying to feed with external things is not real. It's the ego, the image you've been taught to build. It constantly craves attention and validation, yet it's never full. The Buddha saw this clearly. He called it dukkha, the endless dissatisfaction born from attachment and ignorance. The journey within begins when you realize that nothing outside can fix what feels incomplete inside. You start to sense that all the striving, the pleasing, the performing, it's just noise covering silence. At first, the idea of turning inward feels strange, even frightening. You've been running for so long that stillness feels unnatural. But the truth is, the answers you've been seeking have been whispering in your heart this whole time. They were just buried under distraction. When you start the inward journey, you meet the mind in its raw form, restless, judgmental, afraid. The mind doesn't want you to be still because stillness threatens its control. It will try to distract you, reminding you of unfinished tasks, replaying painful memories, inventing reasons why solitude is unsafe. But when you simply observe without reacting, when you let the thoughts come and go like clouds passing through the sky, you begin to see something extraordinary. You are not the mind. You are the awareness watching it. That realization is the first doorway to freedom. As you go deeper, you begin to see how much of your suffering was self-created. Every time you resisted life, you suffered. Every time you demanded control, you suffered. Every time you clung to what was leaving or feared what was coming, you suffered. The Buddha taught that suffering doesn't come from life itself. It comes from resistance to life. When you stop resisting, when you stop demanding that life should match your imagination, something beautiful happens. Peace enters. You begin to move with life, not against it. The journey within also reveals your illusions, the false identities you've built. You start seeing how often you said yes when you meant no, how often you tried to please others at the cost of your own truth, how much energy you've spent being who others wanted you to be. It's humbling, even painful to see this clearly, but it's also liberating because the moment you see it, you can stop. You can let go of the roles, the masks, the expectations. You begin to live from authenticity, not performance. In solitude, you learn to sit with your wounds. Instead of escaping them, you begin to understand them. You start asking, what is this pain trying to show me? Every wound, every heartbreak becomes a teacher. You realize that pain isn't your enemy. It's a guide pointing you toward what still needs love. Healing happens not when you erase the pain, but when you allow it to soften you, when you bring compassion to the parts of you you once rejected. As your awareness deepens, you begin to notice something profound. The more you let go, the lighter you become. You start releasing grudges, fears, and expectations. You stop needing everyone to understand you. You stop chasing explanations for everything that happens. You realize that life doesn't owe you clarity, it owes you experience. And when you surrender to experience, life reveals its wisdom naturally, in time. The Buddha often compared enlightenment to waking up from a dream. For most of your life, you've been dreaming that your value depends on success, that happiness depends on relationships, that peace depends on external stability. When you awaken, the dream doesn't end, the illusion does. You still live, work, and love, but with a new awareness. You no longer cling to outcomes. You no longer resist what comes or mourn what goes. You flow. You accept that life is a river, not a sculpture, and your job is not to freeze it, but to move with it. This awakening brings an entirely new kind of joy, a quiet, grounded joy that doesn't depend on circumstances. You begin to find beauty in simplicity, in the sound of rain, in the warmth of sunlight, in the quiet space between breaths. You realize that joy was never hidden. You were just too busy searching for it to notice it was everywhere. When you stop chasing what's next, you finally see what's here. And as you continue walking inward, you reach the heart, the center of being, beyond thought, beyond fear. Here, you discover what the Buddha called metta, loving kindness, the natural compassion that arises when the illusion of separation dissolves. You see that every living being carries the same longing, to be seen, to be safe, to be free from suffering. In that recognition, love awakens, not as emotion, but as understanding. You no longer love because someone deserves it. You love because love is your nature. The journey within doesn't make you withdraw from the world. It changes how you move through it. You stop fighting for attention, stop reacting to every insult, stop needing to prove anything. Your actions become effortless, guided not by fear or pride, but by clarity. You can stand in the middle of chaos and still feel calm, because your peace no longer depends on the environment. It's anchored within. Over time, you begin to experience life as an interconnected whole. You see that everything, every joy, every pain, every person, was part of your evolution. The people who hurt you taught you forgiveness. The failures that broke you taught you resilience. The loneliness that emptied you taught you self-love. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was meaningless. Every experience was a step leading you back to this still conscious awareness that is your true home. Eventually, you understand what the ancient masters meant when they said, "The kingdom of heaven is within." Heaven is not a distant place. It's a state of being, born when the war inside you ends. You no longer fight with life. You trust it. You no longer chase meaning. You live it. You no longer fear being alone. You rest in your own company as naturally as a tree stands in sunlight. That's when you discover the greatest freedom of all, the freedom from needing to be anyone or anywhere else. You realize that enlightenment isn't some distant peak waiting to be climbed. It's the ground you've been standing on all along. You were never broken, never separate, never incomplete. You were simply unaware of your own wholeness. When you reach that understanding, the search ends. Not because you've given up, but because you've arrived. You become peaceful not because everything is perfect, but because you finally see that perfection was never the point. Life was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be experienced. Every rise and fall, every gain and loss, all of it was part of the great unfolding of consciousness that you are. So now, when you sit alone, in silence, with nothing but your breath, you smile. You no longer see emptiness as lack. You see it as fullness. You no longer fear stillness. You welcome it. Because in that stillness you are not missing life, you are life. You are the awareness through which the universe experiences itself. This is the end of the search and the beginning of real life. The life that doesn't need anyone's approval, the life that doesn't crumble when things change, the life that flows naturally from peace. When you turn within and meet the truth of who you are, you awaken from the illusion of separation and realize something breathtaking. You were never alone. You were always one with everything. That's the essence of enlightenment, not a mystical escape from the world, but a clear seeing in the world, that beneath the chaos, beneath the noise, beneath the endless seeking, you were already whole. The Buddha didn't find something new, he remembered what was always true. And so will you. Because the real journey, the only journey, begins and ends in the same place, within. And when you master that journey, you don't just live, you awaken. 11. The sacred balance, being alone, yet connected to everything. There's a paradox at the heart of human existence. We are born alone, we die alone, and yet we spend our entire lives trying to avoid being alone. We fill every gap with people, noise, and distraction, because silence terrifies us. But Buddhism teaches a truth both humbling and freeing. Solitude is not separation. You can be alone without being disconnected. You can detach from the world, yet still love it deeply. In fact, the more comfortable you become in your own aloneness, the more connected you grow to everything around you. Because when the illusion of dependency fades, the truth of unity is revealed. When you master solitude, you begin to see the interconnectedness of all life in a new way. You no longer feel the need to belong to a crowd because you understand that you already belong to existence itself. You are a wave in the ocean, unique in form, yet inseparable from the whole. Buddhism calls this realization interbeing. It means that nothing exists independently. Everything is part of everything else. Your breath comes from the trees live because of the sun, and the sun shines because of an infinite cosmic dance that keeps the universe alive. Once you see this, you stop feeling lonely, because you realize you were never separate in the first place. But this understanding doesn't come from intellectual belief. It comes from deep inner experience, from silence, from stillness, from time spent alone with awareness. When the noise of the world fades, the veil between me and everything else dissolves. You begin to sense that life is breathing through you, not happening to you. You start to notice that even your thoughts are not entirely yours. They are echoes of everything you've seen, heard, and felt since birth. The mind is a collective instrument, not a private one. And the moment you understand that, loneliness transforms into belonging. Most people chase connection through others because they haven't yet connected with themselves. They crave love because they haven't yet loved their own soul. They seek validation because they haven't yet witnessed their own truth. But once you begin walking the inner path, you realize that self-connection is universal connection. The deeper you go within, the more clearly you see the thread that binds all life together. It's not about isolation, it's about integration. You stop chasing people because you begin to see people in everything, in the rustle of leaves, in the sound of rain, in the heartbeat of silence. Being alone allows you to reconnect with the world in a purer way. When you are constantly surrounded by others, your mind becomes clouded by opinions, energy, and expectation. But solitude clears the fog. It restores your direct relationship with life. You begin to see beauty without needing to post it. You begin to experience moments without needing to label them. You rediscover the sacred simplicity of existence. A cup of tea, a walk in nature, the soft glow of sunrise. All of these become gateways into the eternal now. This is why the Buddha and countless monks throughout history sought solitude. They weren't running away from the world, they were learning to see it clearly. Solitude sharpens perception because it quiets the mind. It's like polishing a mirror. The more still you are, the more accurately you reflect reality. And when you finally see clearly, you notice something astonishing. Everything you once thought was outside of you is actually part of you. The trees breathe with you. The earth holds you. The stars that shine above were born from the same cosmic dust that flows through your veins. When you reach this level of awareness, aloneness becomes sacred. You start to see solitude not as a void, but as a vessel, a space that allows truth to fill you. You realize that silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of understanding. And in that understanding, you find the deepest connection of all, not with people or places, but with existence itself. The mind, however, resists this truth. It loves attachment because attachment gives it identity. It says, I am a lover, a friend, a parent, a success, a victim. It defines itself by roles and relationships. But these identities are fragile. They change, they end, they dissolve with time. When you are left alone, the mind panics because it has nothing left to cling to. Yet that moment, that terrifying stillness, is actually the doorway to freedom. Because when all identities fall away, what remains is pure being, unshakable, boundless, eternal. The Buddha described enlightenment as the end of separation. It's the moment you see through the illusion of I and realize that everything is one continuous movement of life. Solitude gives you glimpses of that truth. When you sit in silence long enough, the boundaries between you and the world blur. You feel the heartbeat of the universe pulsing through your own chest. You sense the stillness beneath all motion, the silence beneath all sound. That's the eternal presence you've been seeking all along, and it has always been within you. Once you understand this, you no longer fear solitude, you crave it. Because solitude becomes your temple. You go there not to escape life, but to remember it. You stop needing validation, attention, or constant connection because you've found the ultimate connection, unity with everything. You realize that relationships are not meant to complete you. They are meant to reflect the completeness that already exists within you. In this awakened solitude, love itself transforms. It becomes lighter, freer, more compassionate. You love not because you need someone, but because you are love. You give not to receive, but because giving is your nature. You begin to see others as expressions of the same consciousness that lives in you. Their pain becomes your compassion. Their joy becomes your celebration. You love without holding, help without pride, and give without fear of loss, because you know that nothing real can ever be lost. When you walk through life from this state of awareness, you carry an inner stillness wherever you go. You could be surrounded by chaos, yet remain calm. You could lose everything, yet remain rich in spirit, because you've discovered something the world cannot take from you, your connection to the eternal. That connection is not found through more relationships or more possessions. It's found in stillness, in silence, in being alone. Every enlightened being, from the Buddha to Lao Tzu to Rumi, found truth in solitude. Rumi said, "In the silence of love, you will find the spark of life." Lao Tzu said, "When I let go of who I am, I become what I might be." And the Buddha said, "No one saves us but ourselves. No one can, and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path." All of them spoke of the same revelation, that solitude is not loneliness, it's the path home. But solitude is not a permanent destination. It's a sacred space you carry with you. You go there to refill your cup, to remember your truth, and then you return to the world, not as someone seeking love, but as love itself. You move through relationships without fear of loss, through challenges without fear of failure, through life without fear of change. Because now you understand that nothing can truly be taken from you. You are the source. The ultimate power of being alone is not isolation, it's integration. When you are comfortable with yourself, you stop running from others and stop clinging to them. You move through life with balance, open but independent, compassionate but calm, loving but free. You don't need to prove your worth because you've seen it with your own eyes in the mirror of solitude. And so, the spiritual journey comes full circle. You begin by fearing solitude, then you learn to face it, then you fall in love with it, and finally you realize that it was never about being alone at all. It was about realizing that you were never separate from anything. You were always part of the whole, and the whole was always within you. That is the sacred balance, being alone yet connected to everything. It's the moment when your solitude becomes strength, your silence becomes wisdom, and your presence becomes peace. You no longer chase life, you embody it. You no longer seek belonging, you are belonging. You no longer search for God, you feel God breathing through you. This is where real life truly awakens, not in noise, not in crowds, but in the quiet knowing that you are never truly alone, because everything that exists is made of the same infinite consciousness that you are. That is the final realization. You can sit beneath a tree, walk through a crowded city, or rest in your own room. It doesn't matter. Wherever you are home. Because once you've mastered being alone, you've mastered the universe within you. And that, the Buddha would say, is enlightenment itself. 12. The art of inner stillness, where you stop seeking and start being. At some point in life, you realize that no amount of achievement, approval, or affection can quiet the restlessness within. You've tried everything: relationships, success, material comfort, even spiritual practices. But the mind keeps running. It wants more. It always wants more. You feel like you're chasing a horizon that keeps moving farther away no matter how fast you run. That's when you begin to understand the ancient truth that the Buddha discovered under the Bodhi tree. The end of seeking is the beginning of peace. Real life begins when the inner noise ends, when you stop chasing happiness and learn to rest in stillness. The world you live in today thrives on movement. Everything tells you to go faster, to do more, to become more. We celebrate busyness as if it were a badge of worth. People measure their value by how many goals they achieve, how many followers they gain, how much attention they attract. Yet beneath that constant motion hides a deep fatigue, not of the body, but of the soul. The soul doesn't need more movement, it longs for stillness. And until you learn the art of inner stillness, you will always feel that something is missing, no matter how much you acquire. Buddhism teaches that the mind is like a restless monkey, jumping from one branch of thought to another. It cannot sit still for long because it believes that peace lies in the next thing, the next success, the next relationship, the next moment. But what happens when you stop feeding that mind? What happens when you stop jumping and simply sit still? At first, discomfort arises, anxiety, boredom, old emotions you've ignored. The mind screams for stimulation. Yet if you stay long enough, something profound begins to happen. The noise starts to fade. The mind starts to slow. Beneath the turbulence, you discover a quiet presence that was there all along. That presence is your true self, pure awareness, silent, unshaken, eternal. Inner stillness is not something you create, it's something you uncover. It's always been there, hidden beneath the layers of thought and emotion. Imagine a muddy pond. When you keep stirring it, the water remains cloudy, but when you stop and let it rest, the dirt settles and the water becomes clear. The same is true of your mind. When you stop reacting, stop fighting, and stop chasing, clarity arises naturally. You begin to see life as it really is, not as your thoughts describe it, but as it unfolds moment by moment. The Buddha called this clarity vipassana, or insight. It's the ability to see through illusion, to recognize that most of your suffering was never caused by life itself, but by your resistance to it. Stillness doesn't mean the absence of movement in the world. It means the absence of inner resistance. You can be busy, yet peaceful, active, yet grounded, because your core remains untouched by external chaos. When you cultivate stillness, you begin to observe your thoughts instead of becoming them. You realize that every worry, every judgment, every story your mind tells is just a passing cloud in the vast sky of awareness. You no longer chase every emotion or thought that arises. You simply watch them, and in doing so, you take away their power. This is the essence of Buddhist meditation, not to control the mind, but to stop letting it control you. In stillness, the heart begins to heal. Emotions you've buried for years rise gently to the surface. Fear, grief, guilt, regret. You may feel waves of discomfort at first, but don't run from them. The Buddha said, "Pain is certain, suffering is optional." What he meant was that pain is inevitable in life, but suffering arises when we resist pain, when we label it as wrong and try to escape it. In stillness, you stop escaping. You let pain flow through you without clinging to it. Slowly, it transforms into wisdom. You begin to see that even the darkest moments of your life carried hidden lessons. Each heartbreak softened you. Each loss deepened you. Each failure humbled you. True inner stillness is not apathy or detachment from life. It's a deeper form of engagement. When your mind quiets, your perception sharpens. You start noticing the beauty in ordinary things, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of leaves in the wind, the taste of water when you're truly present. You no longer need extraordinary experiences to feel alive, because you've discovered the sacredness in simplicity. Every moment becomes meditation, every breath becomes prayer. Buddhism calls this sati, mindfulness. It's the practice of being fully awake in each moment, without drifting into the past or rushing into the future. Most people live like ghosts, physically present but mentally elsewhere. They're reliving yesterday's pain or worrying about tomorrow's problems, never realizing that life is happening now. But when you cultivate inner stillness, you anchor yourself in the now. And in the now, suffering cannot exist, because suffering only lives in time, in regret over what's gone or fear of what's coming. Inner stillness also changes the way you relate to others. When your mind is calm, you stop reacting to people's behavior out of emotion or ego. You listen more deeply, speak more gently, and love more purely. You begin to see that everyone is fighting their own unseen battles, trapped in their own restless minds. Compassion arises naturally because you recognize yourself in them. You realize that peace isn't something you can force on others. It's something you radiate. Your stillness becomes a mirror that helps others see their own. But the most profound gift of inner stillness is freedom. Freedom from fear, from need, from the endless search for more. When you are still, you no longer chase life because you realize that life is already complete. You stop asking, "What can I get?" and start asking, "What can I give?" You live not from lack but from abundance. You no longer need the world to fill you because you've discovered the fullness within yourself. The Buddha often said, "Be still and know." He didn't mean intellectual knowledge, he meant direct experience. In stillness, you know that you are not separate from life. You are life. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop. You are not a soul wandering through the universe. You are the universe expressing itself as a soul. When you rest in that realization, the search ends. You stop trying to become something and simply allow yourself to be what you already are. Stillness doesn't remove challenges from life. It changes how you meet them. You still experience pain, loss, and change, but they no longer define you. You observe them come and go without losing your balance. Like a mountain standing tall amid storms, your inner peace remains unmoved. And in that peace, wisdom blooms. You start understanding that everything in life, every success and setback, every gain and loss, is part of your awakening. Life was never against you. It was always teaching you how to return home to yourself. When you live from stillness, even time feels different. You no longer feel like you're running out of it, because you've stepped into timelessness, the eternal present moment. You realize that the past is memory and the future is imagination, but awareness is eternal. This realization dissolves fear, fear of death, fear of loss, fear of the unknown. because you see that what you truly are cannot be lost. The body changes, the mind changes, the world changes, but awareness, your essence, remains unchanged. It was here before your first breath and will remain after your last. Inner stillness is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Without it, you remain trapped in the machinery of thought, constantly reacting, constantly seeking, constantly suffering. But with it, you become free. You no longer live as a fragment, you live as the whole. You begin to embody what the Buddha meant when he said, "Within this very body and within this very mind lies the entire universe." So stop running, sit down, breathe, feel, let everything settle. Don't try to fix, chase or escape. Just be here. Watch the waves of thought rise and fall without getting lost in them. Watch your emotions flow and fade without labeling them. In that watching, in that gentle awareness, something miraculous happens. You begin to feel peace, not because the world has changed, but because you have. That peace is not fragile. It doesn't depend on silence, meditation, or perfect circumstances. It's the peace that walks with you into every situation, the peace that no storm can shake. It's the peace of one who has remembered who they are, not a seeker, not a sufferer, but a being of pure consciousness experiencing itself through the miracle of life. And that's where real life begins, not in the noise, not in the chase, but in the stillness of your own heart. Because when you stop seeking, you finally start living. When you stop doing, you finally start being. And when you start being, you realize you were never missing anything at all. You were simply too busy searching to notice that everything you ever sought was already within you, quietly waiting in the sacred silence of now. 13. The quiet rebirth. How solitude transforms you from within. Every person at some point in their life reaches a crossroads, a moment when the noise of the world becomes unbearable, when every external pursuit starts to feel meaningless, and when something deep inside whispers, "Stop running." This is not depression, it's awakening. It's the moment the soul calls you back to yourself. It's life's way of saying, "You have spent too long chasing everything outside of you. Now it's time to return home." And that home is found not in people, possessions or achievements, but in the sacred stillness of solitude. Buddhism teaches that transformation begins the moment you stop escaping yourself. The world tells you to keep moving, to keep building, to keep proving. But the Buddha discovered that true power comes not from addition, but from subtraction, from letting go, from simplifying, from entering the silence and allowing life to rearrange you from within. Solitude is that sacred space where the false self dies and the real self is born. It's not about being away from the world. It's about meeting yourself without masks, without noise, without distraction. When you are finally alone, without the constant echo of other voices, something strange happens. At first, discomfort. Your mind starts rebelling. It brings up memories, regrets, fears, and desires. It screams for company, for distraction, for escape. But if you stay, if you simply breathe through that restlessness instead of running from it, something begins to shift. The noise inside you starts to soften. The thoughts that once felt like storms begin to lose their force. The silence that once scared you starts to feel like medicine. You start hearing something you've never truly heard before, your own truth. The ancient masters understood this well. They knew that silence is not an absence, but a teacher. Every great awakening in history, from Siddhartha under the Bodhi tree to Lao Tzu's retreat into the mountains, was born from solitude, because in solitude you meet the parts of yourself you've been too busy to notice. You see the anger you've ignored, the sadness you've numbed, the longing you've silenced. But more importantly, you begin to see the light behind all of it. The unchanging awareness that has watched every joy and every sorrow without judgment. That awareness is who you truly are. This is the quiet rebirth, the transformation that happens not through effort, but through surrender. When you stop trying to fix, force, and control, you begin to dissolve the illusions that have kept you trapped. The ego, which thrives on chaos and comparison, begins to lose its grip, and from that stillness, a deeper intelligence awakens, an intuitive knowing that doesn't come from thought, but from being. This is the space where you no longer chase answers because you realize that the question and the answer were never separate. Solitude is not loneliness. Loneliness says, I need someone to complete me. Solitude whispers, I am already whole. Loneliness is born from fear. Solitude is born from understanding. When you are lonely, you are trapped in the illusion of separation. When you are in solitude, you experience unity with yourself, with nature, with existence. You begin to feel that every tree, every breath, every gust of wind is alive within you. You realize that you don't have a life. You are life. In solitude, the boundaries between you and everything else begin to dissolve. You stop seeing yourself as a separate being trying to survive in a chaotic world and start seeing yourself as part of the great unfolding of the universe. You understand that the same life force that moves the stars also moves through your breath. The same intelligence that guides the seasons guides your journey. You are not lost, you are being led. But you can only feel that guidance when you're quiet enough to listen. Buddhism calls this awareness satori, a sudden awakening, a glimpse of truth so clear that it changes how you see everything. Satori doesn't always come in moments of bliss. Sometimes it comes in moments of heartbreak or stillness. It comes when you realize that the world you've been trying to control was never in your control to begin with, and that letting go is not defeat, but liberation. When you learn to be alone, your relationship with life changes. You stop demanding that things or people fill your emptiness. You stop bargaining with the universe, saying, I'll be happy when. Instead, you start finding peace in what is. You start noticing that you don't need more to feel alive. You just need to be here. In that stillness, gratitude arises naturally. You begin to feel thankful for the simplest things: your breath, the sky, the ability to witness another sunrise. The ordinary becomes extraordinary because your perception has changed. Solitude also teaches you emotional self-reliance. You begin to understand that your peace is your responsibility. It's not your partner's job, not your friend's job, not the world's job. It's yours. You learn to comfort yourself when you're hurting, to ground yourself when you're anxious, to motivate yourself when you're tired. You stop outsourcing your happiness and start generating it from within. This is what the Buddha meant by self-mastery, not control over others, but mastery over your own inner world. As this transformation deepens, the fear of being alone disappears. You no longer fear silence because you've made peace with it. You no longer crave constant stimulation because you've discovered the sweetness of stillness. You no longer fear losing people because you know that nothing real can ever be lost. Love doesn't vanish when people leave. It simply changes form. You begin to love from freedom, not attachment. You give without expecting, and you walk away without bitterness. There's a power that arises from this kind of peace, a quiet strength that doesn't shout or boast, but simply is. It's the strength of one who has faced their own shadows and found light behind them. It's the confidence of someone who no longer needs to prove anything because they've found truth within. When you master solitude, the world no longer controls you with fear or praise. You move through life calmly, like a mountain surrounded by storms, unshaken, grounded, present. This inner transformation doesn't mean you isolate yourself forever. On the contrary, once you've healed through solitude, you return to the world with a softer heart and clearer eyes. You can love people without clinging to them, listen without judging, and speak without ego. Your energy becomes different, peaceful, magnetic, authentic. You don't need to seek connection anymore because your very presence becomes connection. People are drawn to you not because you entertain them, but because you remind them of the peace they've forgotten. The Buddha often used the image of a lotus flower. It grows in muddy water, yet remains unstained. Solitude is the mud, and awareness is the lotus. In solitude, you face the dirt, the pain, the confusion, the loneliness, and from it, your consciousness blooms. The mud is not your enemy. It is your teacher. Without it, there would be no growth. Without darkness, no awakening. Without solitude, no self-realization. When you emerge from this quiet rebirth, you carry something sacred within you, an inner silence that no chaos can touch. You no longer seek peace because you are peace. You no longer search for love because you are love. You no longer chase meaning because you are meaning. And from this realization, everything changes. The world remains the same noise, the same struggles, but your perception transforms completely. You see through the illusions of fear, comparison, and control, and what remains is pure presence. And that presence is life itself, flowing, ungraspable, eternal. When you walk through the world with that awareness, every step becomes meditation, every breath becomes prayer, and every moment becomes sacred. You understand what the Buddha meant when he said, if you are facing in the right direction, all you need to do is keep walking. You stop rushing, you stop striving, you simply live fully and fearlessly in the now. So, if life has led you into a season of solitude, don't fight it. Don't call it loneliness or emptiness. Call it what it truly is, rebirth, the quiet before transformation, the pause before clarity, the sacred silence where the false self dissolves and your true self finally awakens. Because when you embrace solitude, you discover that nothing outside you can define you, complete you, or save you. Because you were never broken in the first place. You were always whole, always divine, always enough. And when you truly see that, not as an idea but as living truth, you will understand what it means to be free. That freedom is not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It's calm, subtle, unshakable, like still water reflecting the sky. It's the freedom of knowing that you no longer need to chase anything to feel alive, because you are already everything you were seeking. This is the quiet rebirth. The moment you stop running from yourself, return to your center, and realize that real life doesn't begin when you find someone else. It begins when you find yourself. And when you finally do, the entire universe feels like home. 14. The space between thoughts. Discovering the infinite within. There's a silence that exists deeper than quiet rooms and empty landscapes, a silence that lives inside you. It's not the absence of sound, it's the stillness beneath every experience, the awareness that watches everything come and go. Buddhism calls it shunyata, emptiness, not as nothingness, but as infinite potential. It's the place where the mind dissolves and pure being remains. When you touch this space between thoughts, you discover something extraordinary, that all your seeking, all your suffering, all your striving were happening on the surface of something vast, eternal, and untouched. This realization doesn't happen through effort. It happens through presence, through being here, completely, without resistance, without story. Most people live entirely on the surface of their own consciousness. Their lives are full of noise. Not just the external kind, but internal noise. Thoughts, judgments, plans, regrets, fears. They rarely experience life as it is because the mind keeps overlaying commentary on everything. You see a sunset and the mind says, "Beautiful, I should take a photo." You sit in silence and the mind whispers, "This is boring." You feel sadness and the mind shouts, "Something's wrong with me." Every moment is filtered, distorted, and labeled, and in that constant chatter, the sacred space between thoughts is lost. But Buddhism teaches that the space is the truth, that what you truly are is not the thought, but the awareness in which thought arises. You are not the wave, you are the ocean that allows every wave to exist. Thoughts, emotions, sensations, they're all temporary visitors. They come and go, but the awareness that sees them never changes. This is what the Buddha meant when he said, "Within this very body and within this very mind lies the entire universe." To realize this, you must slow down, not just physically, but mentally. You must stop living as a reaction and start living as a witness. In the beginning, this can feel strange, even impossible. The mind has been in control for so long that stillness feels unnatural. But if you observe closely, you'll begin to notice small gaps between your thoughts, brief pauses of awareness. Maybe it's a moment after exhaling or a flicker of quiet after a strong emotion passes. In those tiny gaps, something timeless shines through, pure presence. That's you. Meditation is the practice of expanding those gaps. It's not about stopping your thoughts or escaping the world. It's about shifting your attention from the noise to the silence beneath it. You close your eyes, breathe, and watch. You let thoughts rise and fall without chasing them. You don't suppress them. You simply stop identifying with them. Slowly, the grip of the mind loosens. The thoughts continue, but they no longer control you. You begin to rest in the space between them, vast, clear, infinite. In that space, something miraculous happens. The boundaries of the self begin to dissolve. You stop feeling like a separate I inside a chaotic world. You start sensing that everything is happening within you. Every sound, every sight, every breath. You realize that the world isn't outside of you. It's a reflection appearing in your awareness. The trees, the wind, the people, all moving through the same silent consciousness that you are. This is what enlightenment truly means. Not floating above life, but merging with it so completely that separation disappears. And when separation disappears, suffering disappears too. Because suffering can only exist when there's a you resisting what is. The moment you surrender to the flow of existence, pain loses its sting. Fear dissolves because there's no one left to be afraid. What remains is pure being, effortless, eternal, free. Buddhism often uses the metaphor of the sky. The mind, with all its thoughts and emotions, is like the weather, clouds forming, storms passing, winds shifting. But awareness is the sky itself, vast, open, untouched. No matter how violent the storm, the sky remains clear behind it. When you learn to rest in that sky, your entire perception of life changes. You stop fearing the clouds. You stop fighting the storms. You let them come and go, knowing they cannot harm what you truly are. In this stillness, creativity and clarity begin to bloom. The most profound ideas, the deepest wisdom and the purest love all arise from silence. You begin to see that silence is not passive. It's active, alive, intelligent. Every time you drop into it, you align yourself with the rhythm of existence. You stop forcing outcomes and start allowing them. Life begins to flow through you instead of against you. You speak less but say more. You act less but achieve more. Because your actions are no longer driven by fear or ego, they come from truth. This is why the Buddha called meditation the pathless path. You're not going anywhere. You're simply remembering what's always been here. The journey is not forward, but inward, and inward is infinite. When you reach the space between thoughts, you realize that it has no beginning and no end. It's not something you enter. It's what you've always been. You can never lose it because you can never step outside of it. But here's the paradox. You can only experience this truth when you stop trying. The more you chase stillness, the farther it runs. The more you try to be present, the less present you become. The key is surrender, a soft letting go of effort. When you stop striving, stillness naturally reveals itself. Because stillness is not something you create. It's your natural state beneath all the striving. As you begin to live from this awareness, everything transforms. You stop taking things personally. You stop reacting impulsively. you stop needing to prove anything. You become like a mirror, reflecting life without distortion, without judgment. Pain still comes, but it no longer defines you. Joy still arises, but you don't cling to it. You live in perfect balance, free from the highs and lows of attachment. This is what the Buddha meant by nirvana, the extinguishing of craving, the end of illusion, the peace that comes from no longer identifying with the storm. When you walk through the world with that awareness, you begin to see the divine in everything, in laughter, in sorrow, in strangers, in silence. You see that life was never meant to be conquered. It was meant to be experienced. Every breath becomes a gift. Every encounter becomes sacred. You stop asking life to give you more because you realize it already gave you everything, this moment. And when you finally rest in that realization, you awaken to a truth that words can only point toward. You are not in the universe. The universe is in you. You are the space between thoughts, the silence between breaths, the stillness beneath all motion. You are the awareness watching the play of life unfold, eternal, peaceful, infinite. That is the art of inner stillness. It's not a practice you master once, it's a way of being you return to again and again. Each time you fall back into noise, you can remember, the silence is still there, waiting. It has always been there, patiently holding every moment of your life. So pause, breathe, look between your thoughts, not at them. Feel the space that watches everything come and go. That space is you, vast, timeless, free. And when you live from that awareness, real life begins. Not the life built on striving, but the life that simply is. The life that doesn't need meaning because it is meaning. The life that doesn't chase peace because it is peace. The life that doesn't seek love because it is love. When you discover that silence within yourself, you don't escape the world, you embrace it fully. You move through life quietly radiant, softly aware, and deeply alive. That's the quiet enlightenment, not the escape from reality, but the discovery that you are reality itself. 15. The unshakable self, finding peace that nothing can take away. There comes a moment in every spiritual seeker's journey when the search itself begins to crumble. You've read the books, meditated through countless sunrises, chased peace across philosophies and teachers, and yet something still feels incomplete. The mind keeps whispering, "You're not there yet." You begin to wonder, what if there is no there to reach? What if peace isn't something to achieve, but something that was never lost? Buddhism answers this with profound simplicity. True peace is not something you find. It's something you uncover once everything false falls away. To find unshakable peace, you must first understand why ordinary peace is so fragile. The peace most people know depends on conditions. I'll be calm when work slows down. I'll be happy when I'm loved. I'll be content when I have enough money. But conditional peace is an illusion. It vanishes the moment life doesn't cooperate. It's like building a house on the waves. It can never stand. The Buddha saw this clearly. Everything that arises from attachment is destined to fade. The only peace that lasts is the one that does not depend on anything external. That's why Buddhism begins where most people stop, by turning inward. Real peace doesn't come from controlling the world, but from understanding your own mind. You suffer not because life is cruel, but because the mind resists what is. It clings to pleasure, fears pain, and refuses change. But life is change. The seasons shift, people evolve, circumstances rise and fall. Yet the mind wants permanence in a world that is impermanent by design. When you stop fighting this truth, a new kind of peace emerges. Not the fragile calm of control, but the deep, unwavering peace of acceptance. The unshakable self is not cold or indifferent. It's not someone who stops feeling. It's someone who has learned to feel everything without drowning in it. It's someone who has realized that emotions are waves, but they themselves are the ocean. When sadness comes, they allow it. When joy arises, they savor it. But through it all, they remain aware, watching each emotion rise, peak, and pass away. This awareness is the real you. It's not the thinker, the doer, the feeler. It's the space that contains all of it. This awareness cannot be shaken because it doesn't cling to form. The body ages, the mind changes, the world shifts, but awareness simply is. It was here before your first breath and will remain after your last. This is what the Buddha called the deathless state. You can lose possessions, relationships, even your identity, but you cannot lose awareness, because you are it. When you awaken to this truth, fear begins to dissolve. You realize that nothing external can truly harm you because what you are is not external at all. Yet awakening to this truth is not about intellectual understanding, it's about lived experience. You cannot think your way into peace, you must fall into it. That's why meditation exists, to help you return to your natural state, the state before the noise. When you sit in silence, the mind initially rebels. It throws every distraction at you, memories, fantasies, worries. But if you simply keep watching, not judging, not fighting, something shifts. The thoughts keep moving, but you stop following. You see that you were never inside the storm. You were the sky above it all. The unshakable self begins to form when you stop reacting and start observing. Life still moves. People still come and go, challenges still appear, but your center remains untouched. It's like sitting beside a river instead of being swept away by it. You see the current, but you are not the current. You no longer say, I am angry. You say, anger is passing through me. You no longer say, I am lost. You say, the mind is uncertain right now. That small shift changes everything. Because when you stop identifying with passing states, suffering loses its power. This doesn't mean you withdraw from life. It means you participate fully, but with awareness. You still love deeply, work passionately, dream boldly, but you no longer depend on outcomes for your happiness. You understand that joy is found in the doing, not in the result. The Buddha called this right effort, action guided by wisdom, not craving. You do your best, and then you let go. You stop asking, what will I get from this? And start asking, how can I bring peace into this moment? When you live this way, the world no longer controls your emotional weather. Praise and criticism, gain and loss, pleasure and pain, they all come and go, but your inner sky stays clear. This is what the Buddha meant by equanimity, the perfect balance of heart and mind. It's not numbness, it's freedom. You feel everything, but you cling to nothing. You respond to life instead of reacting to it. You see people's anger and recognize it as their pain. You witness your own fear and recognize it as your mind's illusion. You begin to live with clarity instead of chaos. And in that clarity, compassion grows. Because once you've seen through your own suffering, you can see through everyone else's. You stop judging and start understanding. You realize that every person is fighting their own mind, just as you were. Even those who hurt you are acting from ignorance, not evil. The Buddha said, hatred does not cease by hatred, but by love. But to live that truth, you must first discover the love that arises from awareness. The love that is unconditional because it doesn't come from the ego. When you touch this level of being, you experience what many mystics call the unshakable heart. It's the heart that stays open even when life breaks it. It's the heart that forgives, not because it's weak, but because it understands. Forgiveness is not saying it's okay. It's saying, I won't let this pain close my heart. When you live from this space, every experience, even suffering, becomes part of your awakening. You see that nothing was ever wasted. Every loss, every failure, every heartbreak was preparing you for this realization. That peace is not given by life, it's discovered within life. This discovery changes everything. You stop trying to fix yourself because you see that you were never broken. You stop trying to escape life because you see that everything you were running from was your teacher. Pain taught you strength. Silence taught you wisdom. Solitude taught you presence. And through it all, awareness, your truest self, remained, watching, waiting, loving. The unshakable self is not a distant ideal. It's your natural state. It's who you were before the world told you who to be. It's the consciousness that was there when you laughed as a child, when you cried in heartbreak, when you watched the sunset and felt time stop. It has never left you. You simply stopped noticing it. But the moment you pause, breathe, and turn inward, you'll feel it again, the quiet presence that needs nothing to be complete. From this awareness, life becomes effortless. You stop resisting the flow and begin to move with it. You don't need to control what's next, because you trust what's now. The Buddha once said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." He wasn't giving advice. He was describing a fact. The peace you've been searching for has always been inside you, waiting beneath the noise of thought. All you need to do is remember. And remembrance happens in stillness, not in the future, not through achievement, but right here, in this breath. Each breath is a doorway back to yourself. Each moment of awareness is a return home. When you truly grasp this, you become unshakable, not because life stops changing, but because you stop fighting the change. You walk through chaos untouched, through storms unafraid, because you've realized the truth that can never be taken from you. You are the awareness, not the experience. That is the ultimate freedom. To live in a world of impermanence with a heart rooted in eternity. To smile in uncertainty. To find stillness in motion. To love without fear. That is the peace the Buddha found. That is the peace that belongs to you too. So stop searching, sit, breathe, look within. The treasure you've been chasing is already here. It was never missing, only hidden beneath layers of noise, fear, and desire. Let them fall away, and what remains is the unshakable self. Vast as the sky, silent as the stars, steady as the mountain, and free as the wind. This is the peace that cannot be taken, the joy that cannot be destroyed, the love that does not end. This is who you truly are. When you walk far enough on the path of solitude, something extraordinary happens. The journey you thought was leading you outward begins folding back into itself. You realize that all the searching, all the longing, all the endless striving were not about finding something new. They were about remembering what you already were. You were never meant to become something else. You were meant to return to yourself. The quiet, unshakable, eternal self that existed before the noise, before the pain, before the world told you who to be. Buddhism teaches that enlightenment is not an achievement, but a homecoming. You don't climb toward it. You fall into it, the moment you stop resisting life as it is. When you sit in silence and stop needing the world to make sense, something subtle yet powerful awakens inside you. Peace. Not the fragile peace that depends on comfort or understanding, but the vast peace that simply is. You begin to see that nothing is missing, nothing was ever broken, and every experience, the joy, the sorrow, the chaos, was part of your unfolding into awareness. You no longer crave validation, because you've found truth. You no longer chase love, because you are love. You no longer seek meaning, because life itself has become sacred. Every moment, every breath, every encounter becomes an expression of the divine. You walk through life lighter, softer, freer, not because the world changed, but because you did. You stopped fighting reality and started flowing with it. You stopped running from solitude and began to rest within it. And in that rest you rediscover what every great teacher, mystic, and monk has whispered for centuries. That peace is not found in places or people or moments of perfection. Peace is found when the mind bows to the present moment and the heart opens to what is. When you no longer need to control, to understand, or to escape, you begin to live from a place beyond fear. You begin to see that everything that comes to teach. Everything that leaves to make space. And everything that remains remains to awaken you. This is where real life truly begins, not when you find the right person, not when you reach your goals, not when you finally figure it all out, but when you can sit alone in silence and feel completely whole. That moment, that stillness, that awareness, that is enlightenment. So walk gently, breathe deeply, and remember, you are not lost, you are simply returning home. You are not empty, you are clearing space for peace. You are not alone, you are one with everything that exists. Real life doesn't begin when the noise ends. It begins when you stop needing the noise at all. And in that silence, you finally meet yourself. The self that was never broken, never lacking, never apart from the universe. That is where the journey ends and where life, real life, finally begins.